Brenner McCall's heart thudded like a war drum, fast and hard against his ribs as he stepped into the translucent chamber. Not from fear. He was sure of that. It was the same feeling he got when he base jumped off the edge of Burj Khalifa or surfed a tropical storm swell off the coast of Hawaii. It was the rush, the thrill, the absolute joy of stepping into the unknown. But to Velen, the tall, bioluminescent liaison from the Trinari diplomatic corps, Brenner looked like he was about to collapse. Velen's luminous skin dulled a few degrees. Your heart rate has increased by 50%. I am detecting elevated cortisol and adrenaline levels. You are entering a panic state. Brenner grinned, his eyes bouncing around the foreign chamber like a kid in a candy store. No, this is just excitement. Trust me, if I was panicking, I'd be trying to punch something or screaming. Velen blinked slowly, his vertical pupils narrowing. This contradicts our human biometric database. Elevated heart rate and stress chemicals are definitive markers of distress. I get that, but humans are weird. Sometimes we get a kick out of stuff that's supposed to be terrifying. Roller coasters, horror movies, skydiving, heck, some of us like public speaking. There was a pause as Velen processed this, his head tilting slightly. So you are not malfunctioning? Nope. Functioning at full capacity. Brenner gave a thumbs up, which only confused Velen more, the chamber doors sealed with a hiss. Brenner felt the pressure shift in his ears as the gravity equalizer kicked in. He was the first human to set foot on the Trinari homeworld, a gas giant orbiting a binary star system. The diplomatic mission had taken years to arrange, and he, being a civilian ambassador with an adrenaline addiction and a PhD in xenopsychology, had been the top pick. The floor beneath him rippled slightly, adjusting to his weight. Velen stepped forward, his elongated limbs moving in fluid sync. The Council of 12 awaits. They request a demonstration of emotional control under duress to evaluate human resilience. Wait, I thought this was just a meet and greet. They were impressed by your dossier. Your past experiences suggest you thrive under extreme conditions. They have prepared a trial, Brenner's grin faltered. What kind of trial? Velen's skin shimmered. A simulation of planetary collapse conditions, seismic instability, oxygen fluctuation, and social isolation. You will be monitored. Brenner blinked. So. A panic room designed by aliens? It is not designed to induce panic. It is designed to test your response to potential threats. Your kind considers this a professional evaluation. Okay, sure, sounds like a Wednesday. Inside the simulation chamber, the lights dimmed. A low rumble vibrated through the floor. Artificial tremors sent dust-like particles falling from above. Brenner crouched instinctively, one hand bracing against the wall. The oxygen thinned slightly, just enough to make his breaths longer. He laughed, actually laughed. You guys are good. This almost feels like that time I got stuck in a cave-in during that dig in Patagonia. Velen's voice came through a recessed speaker. Your heart rate is now at 160 beats per minute. Yeah, because this is awesome. Further analysis required. The ground split open suddenly on the left side of the chamber, and Brenner was flung sideways into a padded wall. His shoulder took the brunt, and he winced. Okay, that one wasn't fun. Are you injured? I'm fine, just surprised. Keep it coming. Velen watched in silence from the observation deck. The other Trinari officials exchanged nervous glances. One of them, Sorrel, leaned closer to Velen. He should be unconscious or in shock. Velen nodded. Instead, he is making verbal noises consistent with joy. The trial continued for another 17 minutes. Brenner was subjected to simulated storms, darkness, and isolation. His vitals spiked but remained stable. When the lights finally returned and the tremors stopped, he was lying on his back, panting and smiling. Tell the council I give them enough effort. Velen entered the chamber cautiously. You have passed the trial, barely. Brenner sat up, rubbing his neck. Barely. I didn't even scream. Your cognitive patterns suggest you were enjoying the experience. I was. That is not the expected response. Welcome to Earth logic. Velen helped him up, though he barely needed it. They walked together down the corridor toward the debriefing wing. The Trinari architecture was strange rounded corners, organic feeling walls that pulsed faintly with light. As they entered the debriefing suite, a new alien stepped forward. Smaller, sleeker, with pale green skin and dark, steady eyes. "I am Tana. I observed your trial." "I have questions." Brenner nodded. "Shoot." "Your heart rate rose to dangerous levels, yet you claimed pleasure." "Yeah, it's not uncommon for humans to feel excited in risky situations. It's part of how we evolved." "Fight or flight sometimes translates into a thrill. You are saying distress and joy produce similar physical symptoms." "Exactly." Tana looked disturbed. "That is dangerous." "How do you know when to flee?" "We usually figure it out too late, to be honest." The next day, Brenner was escorted to a research wing where the council had arranged for deeper psychological and physiological studies. Not experiments, as they were careful to clarify, but cooperative analysis. He agreed, mostly because he was curious and also because he liked being in places no other human had ever seen. The testing involved everything from obstacle courses under low gravity to solving logic puzzles while being blasted with sudden, disorienting sounds. At one point, they simulated a hull breach and rapid decompression. After being pulled back into the chamber with a safety tether, Brenner's heart rate hit 180. Velen's voice came again over the comms. "You are in distress." Brenner gasped for breath but laughed through it. "That was amazing. You could have experienced cardiac arrest. But I didn't. That's the point." Later, back in the medical wing, he lay shirtless on a padded exam table while a Trinari medic scanned him with something resembling a floating jellyfish. "You tore a muscle in your shoulder." "It must be immobilized." "Yeah, I figured. I felt the pop when I hit the wall. You did not mention this. Didn't want to ruin the fun." "You must rest at least 7 Earth days," Brenner sighed. "Fine. But I get to watch the next trials live." While he recovered, the Trinari ran comparative tests on other species. None responded to the simulations with anything but terror or shut-down responses. Only Brenner had exhibited what Tana called pleasure-linked stress. By the time he returned to full strength, word of his trial had spread. Trinari students began studying human thrill-seeking behavior. A cultural exchange program was proposed. Brenner was invited to lead it. During one of the early sessions, a young Trinari researcher asked him, "Do all humans enjoy fear?" Brenner shook his head. "Not fear, excitement. They're close cousins, but not the same. But your physical responses are identical." "Yeah. That's what makes it fun." A month later, during a diplomatic gala, the Trinari simulated a mild tremor as a gesture of cultural appreciation. Brenner laughed so hard he nearly spilled his drink. Velen stood beside him, arms folded. "You are the only being we've met who grins at simulated death." Brenner raised his glass. "It's not about dying, Velen. It's about living hard enough that you forget to be scared." Velen considered that. "That is either deeply wise or extremely foolish, probably both." And that, more than anything else, was what the Trinari learned about humans, that their greatest strength wasn't their intelligence or strength, but their baffling ability to find joy in chaos. Even when their hearts raced like they were about to die, they might just be having the time of their lives. The room was colder than Brenner expected. Not uncomfortably so, but enough to raise goosebumps across his arms. He sat on the examination bench with his legs dangling, watching a stream of blue vapor trail from the ceiling vents. Across from him, Tana adjusted a console embedded in the wall. Her fingers moved in delicate arcs, brushing across the air as though tuning invisible strings. "Don't humans require warmer environments for optimal recovery?" she asked without looking up. "Most of us do," Brenner replied, "but I like the cold. Keeps the swelling down." Tana exhaled through her gills, an involuntary sound Brenner had learned meant mild doubt. "You're still exhibiting localized inflammation." Lateral deltoid, correct? Yeah, there's a tear. Feels like it's knitting up fine, though. She finally turned, her large eyes narrowing. You declined the tissue accelerant again. It speeds healing, but it also messes with natural regeneration. Human muscle builds back stronger with effort. I'd rather take the slower route. That logic pattern resembles a training algorithm more than a medical one. Call it evolution with a gym membership. Tana tilted her head, processing. You willingly accept pain to encourage biological improvement. Pretty much. She moved closer, scanning the shoulder again with a hovering disc. It emitted a clicking rhythm Brenner found oddly soothing. This would be considered masochistic behavior among our kind. Among ours too, technically, he grinned. But we've got a whole culture around it. Sports, weightlifting, even martial arts, voluntary discomfort for long-term gain. Tana tapped the disc once and it floated back to its cradle. Your species' architecture is deeply inefficient, maybe, but it builds character. Character is not a quantifiable asset. You've never met a grandma from Detroit. She blinked twice, confused again. That happened often. Brenner enjoyed it, an announcement tone chimed overhead. Tana glanced upward, then back at him. The Council has requested your presence in the analysis forum. They've compiled data from over 400 hours of observation. Brenner tugged his shirt over his head carefully, wincing as the fabric caught his shoulder. Hope they didn't expect consistency. I get distracted easily. They noted that. It was categorized as cognitive drift under non-lethal pressure. He stood, stretching carefully. Sounds about right. The walk to the forum took them past a processing corridor lined with transparent conduits. Beneath their feet, streams of violet liquid pulsed rhythmically, part of the Trinari's bioreactive architecture. Brenner tried not to stare too long. It made him feel like he was walking over the veins of a sleeping giant. At the forum, the room was alive with movement. Dozens of Trinari researchers floated above the floor in stabilization harnesses, their limbs tucked inward in a resting configuration. Their skin tones varied wildly from pale coral to deep turquoise, but all pulsed with a subtle shimmer of interest when Brenner entered. Velen stood near the center, flanked by two senior analysts. He gestured toward a circular platform. Please stand here. The data will be projected in your perceptual spectrum. Brenner stepped onto the circle, which adjusted to his weight with a faint hum. A series of images burst into view around him: X-rays, cortisol readings, infrared scans, even slow-motion footage of his reaction to the simulated chamber collapse. The footage paused frequently, highlighting points of interest with glowing markers. During this moment, said one of the analysts, your body exhibited signs of physical trauma, yet your facial expressions aligned with species indicators of amusement. Yup. That part reminded me of a training accident back on Earth, same kind of chaos. I guess my brain made the connection. Velen's gaze didn't shift. You associated a high-risk event with a previous injury and responded with humor. Better than crying about it. Another analyst spoke, her voice more melodic. You experienced a tendon strain, partial oxygen deprivation, and a collision with a reinforced barrier. Yet your post-trial commentary described the event as invigorating. I stand by that. Velen turned toward the group. The term invigorating is contextually positive. It implies gain from adversity. Exactly. I got a story, some bruises and adrenaline. That's a win. Tana stepped forward. We've compiled comparative data. No other species in known space volunteers for stress stimuli with the intent of enjoyment. Yours is singular. Brenner scratched his jaw. Maybe we're just bored easily. Velen signaled again, and the projection changed. A new set of visuals emerged, this time from a test not yet discussed. Brenner recognized it immediately, the social isolation module. No environmental hazards, just silence and a simulated 30-hour containment. You sang, Velen said. Brenner nodded. Yeah, helps pass the time. You constructed new musical patterns from memory and improvisation. Why? Because silence is boring, and singing makes the brain feel good. You were alone. There was no audience. Doesn't matter. Sometimes we do things just because they're fun. The analysts exchanged glances. One of them whispered, intrinsic motivation without social reinforcement, high anomaly. Velen stepped closer. You also created rhythmic tapping sequences with your fingers. Was this a form of communication, drumming? It keeps the mind busy. Repetitive patterns help us stay grounded, mentally balanced, not spinning out. Tana leaned in slightly. You maintained full cognitive function without external stimulus for 30 hours. That's rare even among trained Trinari pilots. I used to work night shifts at a geological station in Antarctica. No sunlight for weeks. You learn tricks. Velen turned back to the group. This data suggests that humans possess a unique form of adaptive self-stimulation under sensory deprivation. Combined with their paradoxical pleasure response to threat stimuli, it indicates unprecedented neuroplasticity. One of the analysts hesitated. Should we be concerned? Brenner raised a hand. Hey, we're not dangerous, just weird. The analysts began recording vocally, their languages overlapping in an echo of clicks and tones. Brenner waited until the sound tapered off, then stepped down from the platform. Tana followed. You've destabilized several models, she said, sorry, in a good way. It's prompted reevaluation of emotional mapping protocols. Well, glad to be helpful. Your kind may require its own classification. Not merely sentient, but behaviorally unpredictable under conventional models. I think we'd take that as a compliment. Later that cycle, he found himself back in the recovery wing, not because he needed it, but because he wanted to see the data they refused to show in the council chamber. The raw stuff. Tana granted access reluctantly. She brought up a cluster of files, each tagged with a shimmering glyph. These are your neurochemical fluctuations during the simulation. There's a spike pattern here we've never recorded. It resembles a euphoric state, but it occurred alongside physical trauma. Yeah, that tracks. There's no known evolutionary advantage to that pairing. Brenner leaned closer. Maybe not in a general sense. But if you're a species that's always been on the edge of survival war, whether predators you start rewiring, we didn't get here by being comfortable. Tana studied the graph again. You rewired yourselves through suffering, through persistence. She looked at him longer than necessary. It's not how we would have approached it. Maybe that's why it works. As he left the lab, his shoulders still aching slightly, Brenner realized something he hadn't before. The Trinari weren't just fascinated, they were nervous, not afraid of humans exactly, but uncertain. He could see it in their cautious tones, their endless questions. He didn't blame them. After all, what kind of species laughs when the world shakes beneath them? Apparently his kind. Brenner shifted his weight, then winced as a muscle in his lower back protested. The reclined diagnostic chair adjusted automatically, sensing the tension, but it didn't help much. He'd been sitting there for nearly an hour, and he was starting to feel it in places he hadn't realized were sore. Tana stood across from him, her arms folded in a way that made her look both skeptical and fascinated. She hadn't blinked in nearly 2 minutes. You're still experiencing pain in the lumbar region, she said. Yeah, probably from the tether yank during the decompression test. It wrenched me weird. You did not report it. I figured it'd settle on its own. That assumption is unwise. I've had worse. I mean, I once slept in a fiberglass canoe for 5 days during a flood survey. This is fine. That is not relevant, Tana said flatly. Your current condition requires addressing. I'm addressing it. I'm sitting here, aren't I? You were scheduled for active rest. This is not active, nor restful. Brenner exhaled slowly. Okay, what's the plan? We're going to analyze your soft tissue integrity using a continuous scan. You will remain still. Define still. No movement, no speaking, no microexpressions. Anything that shifts muscle tension will interfere. That sounds impossible. It is necessary. The scan will last 4 minutes. 4 minutes. That's it? Yes. I've held my breath longer than that. Tana didn't respond. She simply activated the scanner, which released a dull thrum that vibrated through the chair and up his spine. The room dimmed slightly, and the air around him grew warmer. Not uncomfortably so, but enough to feel like a weighted blanket had settled over his limbs. He stared at the ceiling, which displayed a slow-moving pattern of fractals meant to reduce involuntary eye movement. About 30 seconds in, his nose itched. At the 2-minute mark, his left eyelid began twitching. By the time it ended, his jaw ached from trying not to yawn. Tana checked the results, her expression unreadable. "You moved." It was an eyelid twitch. "It disrupted the scan velocity. We must repeat it," he groaned. "Is this punishment for not reporting the back pain?" "It is protocol. Your protocol's a sadist." She ignored that and initiated the scan again. After the second attempt, which went marginally better, she finally seemed satisfied. She waved a hand and the chair returned to a seated position. "You have a partial strain on the right erector spinae. It's minor, but untreated it will worsen." "So what? Ice and stretching, thermal modulation and guided myofascial release." "That sounds fancy." "It is not." "It is effective." She led him to an adjoining chamber where a section of the wall folded outward, revealing a padded mat and a hovering device with flexible appendages. The appendages were coated in a translucent gel-like substance that seemed to shimmer faintly. He hesitated. "That thing looks like it wants to tenderize me." "It will apply calibrated pressure along your muscular banding. You will remain prone and silent." "I'm noticing a pattern." She didn't reply, simply gestured for him to lie down. As the device began its work, Brenner felt a deep pull along his lower back, not painful, but oddly intimate, like something had figured out exactly where his tension lived and was negotiating with it. Minutes passed. "You're clenching," Tana observed from behind a control node. "It's reflex. You must not resist." "I'm trying not to. It's just intense." "It is not dangerous." "I didn't say it was, it's just, I don't usually let anyone do this." She raised a brow. "Your species permits only certain individuals to conduct physical therapy?" "No, I mean I usually handle it myself. Foam rollers, hot showers, maybe a tennis ball if I'm desperate. This is a whole other level. You resist assistance, even when injured." "Yeah. We tend to see independence as a strength. That is inefficient. It's a cultural thing." After the session ended, Brenner sat up slowly. His back felt looser, almost unfamiliar. The pain wasn't gone, but it had shifted less sharp, more manageable. He rotated his torso experimentally. "Okay, I'll admit it, that helped. You require 2 additional sessions, I figured." Tana tapped a note into her console. "You will adhere to the schedule." He nodded, then stood. "So is this whole thing going in your report?" "Yes." "Every detail." "That's going to be one weird read." "It is already under review. The Council is convening this evening to finalize their assessment of your species' adaptive responses." "Are they expecting me to be there?" "No, observation only." "You will be sequestered." Sounds ominous. "It is standard." Later that cycle, Brenner was escorted to a quiet lounge chamber with a view of the gas giant's outer atmosphere. The walls filtered in muted light pulses from the planet's swirling surface, casting soft, peach-colored shadows across the floor. He stretched out on a low bench, sipping a mineral-rich liquid that tasted vaguely like carbonated kelp. Velen entered without announcement. "I thought I wasn't supposed to be disturbed," Brenner said. "This is not a disturbance, it is a courtesy." "Nice of you." Velen remained standing. "The Council has concluded deliberations. And they have deemed your species non-linear." "That sounds vague." "It is intentional. Your behavior resists standard categorization. You experience physiological distress in ways that do not align with external conditions. You self-induce discomfort. You find pleasure in risk. You maintain cognitive function under deprivation. These traits are not shared by any known sentience. So what does that mean for Earth? You will not be admitted to the Core Concord just yet." Brenner's brow furrowed. "That's a rejection." "It is a delay. The The Council has determined that your species must be studied further before integration. However, they have authorized selective contact and exchange. Selective, limited personnel, controlled environments, monitored interactions. I guess that's better than nothing. You are invited to remain as liaison. Brenner blinked. You want me to stay here? Long term, you are uniquely suited to the role. You do not break easily. I'm flattered. It is not flattery, it is observation, he chuckled. Still, nice to be useful. Velen inclined his head. You will have quarters assigned. Tana will oversee your physical regimen. Of course she will. Velen turned to leave, but paused. There is one more detail. Hit me. The Council has revised its psychological models to include a new axis, voluntary discomfort as motivational factor. It is based entirely on your input. I've inspired bureaucracy. That's a first. You have altered protocol. That is rare. After Velen left, Brenner sat in silence, watching the atmosphere swirl below. He didn't know exactly what he'd expected from this mission, but it hadn't been this a footnote in an alien civilization's manual on unpredictable species. Still, it wasn't a bad legacy. He pressed a hand to his lower back. The ache was fading, and for once he didn't mind staying in one place, not if it meant he could keep surprising them.